Oh, sorry, I didn't notice you there. I'm Paddy from the United Nations Youth Association, and I've just been thinking about the United Nations. Why don't I tell you about it? The UN is an international, intergovernmental organisation. Now, it's not a government and it doesn't create laws, but it does provide a mechanism for dealing with conflicts and for creating policy on global issues.
Hey, are you talking about the UN?
What? Oh, yeah, I am. Did you know that it has 192 member states, and it was created in the aftermath of World War II, founded on October 24th, 1945, by a group of 51 countries, including Australia. Now, the rights and duties of each member state are outlined in the UN Charter.
The purposes of the UN Charter are to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly international relations, to help member states cooperate in solving international problems and promoting human rights, and to be a centre for harmonising and unifying acts of nations. A key issue to understand are the principles guiding the actions of member states of the United Nations. All these principles are really important, and staying true to all of them at once can prove a diplomatic challenge. These principles are set out in the UN Charter, that all member states have sovereign equality, and that all member states must obey the Charter. Countries must try to settle their differences by peaceful means, and must avoid using force or threatening to use force. They must try to assist the UN as much as possible, and in return, the UN cannot interfere with domestic affairs.
But hey, what does the UN actually do?
Well, Paddy, I'm glad you asked. What the UN does depends largely on what part of the organisation you're talking about. We can split up the UN into 6 major internal bodies. So first up we have the General Assembly. The General Assembly, or the GA, is the main deliberative body of the UN, and every one of the 192 member states gets a vote. The GA makes decisions on things like the budget, whether new states can be admitted to the UN, and matters of peace and security. Though decisions made by the GA aren't legally binding for governments, they do represent the moral standpoint of the global community, and they can be really useful in that respect.
Oh yeah, and then we've got the Security Council, right? It's a much smaller body with only 15 members, including the 5 permanent members: Russia, China, the USA, the UK, and France. The other 10 are non-permanent members, elected for 2-year terms and representing all the other parts of the world. And unlike GA resolutions, anything passed by the Security Council is binding on nations.
The Economic and Social Council coordinates, unsurprisingly, the United Nations economic and social enterprises. ECOSOC operates under the authority of the General Assembly and has 54 member states who each serve a 3-year term. ECOSOC takes in reports from several different UN agencies. These include the UNDP, which looks at development projects in over 166 countries, UNICEF, which works to promote the rights of the child, and UNHCR, which is the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. There also used to be a branch of the UN called the Trusteeship Council. This was set up to help trust territories move towards independence. Seeing as the last of these territories gained independence in 1994, the Trusteeship Council has since been formally suspended.
Moving on, we have the International Court of Justice, which is the principal judicial body of the United Nations. The ICJ has 15 judges, elected both by the General Assembly and by the Security Council. 9 of these judges have to agree before a decision can be made, and once a country agrees to let the court hear a case, they must comply with its decision. And finally, other organs of the UN may seek an advisory opinion from the court. Last but not least, we have the Secretariat, which deals with the administration of all UN business. Now, the Secretary-General is in charge of the whole show, and he leads the Secretariat as they service all other UN organs and administer their programs and policies.
Well, that's cool, but what else does the UN do?
Well, the UN works for peace. It has programs promoting nuclear disarmament, and it mandates the work of peacekeepers, most often working in conflict zones, to establish ceasefires or to maintain buffer zones while negotiations take place. And it promotes human rights and justice. The General Assembly proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, a document which sets out the basic rights and freedoms to which all people are entitled.
Yeah, and the UN provides disaster relief as well, right? With the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs launching about 15 projects a year and reaching over 400 million people. The UN also works for development, putting in place international development strategies every decade since the 1960s. And by 2009, the UN had given more than $15 billion in 140 countries to fight HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, which kill more than 6 million people every year.
Well, that sounds great, but what about the future?
As we move into the future, the UN continues its focus across many areas, including promoting sustainable development,
tackling the challenges of climate change,
empowering women and striving towards universal gender equality,
promoting disarmament and a nuclear-free world,
preventing and resolving deadly conflicts around the world,
advancing on issues of human rights and the rule of law,
and strengthening the UN system and building a stronger UN for a better world. So I guess the UN really is relevant.
Yeah, and that's just a brief overview of what the UN does. I mean, it has programs running all around the world.
For more information, check out un.org. Or to find out who we are, check out anya.org.au.